Make the show easier. we could stitch it all together.
I'll have an earpiece and you have an earpiece, and 24/7 we just stream record.
It's just fucking stream of unconsciousness out into the ether.
And then we'll pay someone in Fiverr to edit it. It's a great idea for a show.
Fiverr.
Why
I love Fiverr.
Why are we up so early?
Or is it late? I don't know. I don't even know what time it is.
Well, I'm glad you're back. I have your mail.
I'm only like half back.
I got...
My other half is still on the West Coast.
Yeah, man. I'm going to Mexico.
Mexico is only an hour behind, not 3 hours behind.
Yeah, an hour behind in a few centuries. All right, let me cue this up.
Burros and churros.
Am I plugged into this thing?
Oh, I hope so.
Oh, fuck.
What do you mean?
You know.
You mean like Bluetoothed?
Yeah. No. In case I want to play that clip. But I won't go crazy with Arnold. All right, I don't want to do too much crap at the beginning.
Why not?
I don't know.
The beginning is the best crap.
I feel like nobody really wants to hear that. All right.
Everybody wants to hear it.
It's not working.
That's why people download our shit all the time.
Shit. Yeah, definitely don't put all of this in.
No, it's all going in.
I will edit it out, goddammit.
Do not.
Nobody likes this.
I'm not connected. Oh, I am connected to the Rodecaster Pro.
Okay.
Now I'm not connected to the Rodecaster.
Okay, so now I am going to try and connect.
Oh, wait, I have to put the connect button going.
Yeah, okay.
This is how the sausage is made, ladies and gentlemen.
Sausage.
Wait, it says you are paired.
No, fuck. Where? Okay. Who's ready for some action? All right, I have to... Oh, Today Explained. Okay. Right, forget it. I can't find it. All right. And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
And I'm Mike R., I think.
And boy, do we have a show for you. Today on RMA, Mike returns from his summer jaunt to the West Coast, and we tackle Portland's controversial ballot measure 110, decriminalizing possession of small amounts of narcotics. Today on a very special edition of RMA. Hey, and welcome back, Mike.
Thanks, man. Isn't this really a larger discussion about the concept of legalizing hard drugs? I mean, Portland is certainly the test case in the U.S., but really, I mean, if Portland is successful, this will be extrapolated to other jurisdictions where the hippies control the DA's office. So anyway, we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I'd like to thank you for rewriting the intro section. It really flows, so let me do my part.
Okay, yeah.
Firstly, we would like to welcome our international listeners. Several hundred of you are listening from the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. We hope the message translates to your version of the English language, which always sounds cooler and more erudite than our New York drawl. How come we didn't put a message like this up for our Pakistani listeners? There are 3.
Do we have 3 Pakistani listeners?
3 or 4. They're probably hiding in a closet with a radio.
Well, Australia is really cool.
Yeah, Australia is great. I love the Aussies.
Australia.
Yeah. So right. That's the country.
It is. And we're talking about getting arrested or not getting arrested.
This is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, we know. He just had a birthday.
He did?
2 days ago. He's 74. Wow,
he's old. This soundboard sucks.
Great guy. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, where you can listen to the show, buy merch, and tell us your story. Can they buy merch yet?
They can buy the one shirt. We've got the new shirts coming. I'm going to set that up when I get back from Mexico.
Why would they buy the old shirt if you tell them that the new shirt is coming?
Well, the old shirt is great.
The old shirt's okay.
We shouldn't call it the old shirt. We should call it the
classic.
The classic.
RMA Classic.
Because that's the design I did. It's not done by fancy Jeff D's awesome art studio. It's done by me.
Right. So continuing with our homespun theme from the early days of the podcast, you can own a piece of history, ladies and gentlemen. A piece of history.
Is that what it is?
It's something.
It's cool, though. It's a beautiful shirt. I mean, look, when I get shirts made from my store or for the podcast, we get the finest materials.
True. I keep forgetting that you're the expert when it comes to ordering materials.
That's right.
I never heard of the Tri-Blend until I met you.
Tri-Blend is the Scheissnickel.
Yeah. The Scheissnickel?
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that one.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
fine.
Arnold, please.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and
What do
wherever
you want from
fine.
me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I want you to
I'm
shut
putting
the
this
fuck
away.
up till I finish the intro is what I want.
I'm not going to touch it.
Get the latest news, updates, and meet other RMA Monksters. I guess we're going with that on our private, unsearchable Facebook group found easily by searching Recovery in the Middle Ages on Facebook search or find the link conveniently on middleagesrecovery.com. The great reviews will be read on the air.
Yeah.
The bad reviews will be consigned to the dustbin of history. Please log on to your favorite podcast app. Apple Podcasts is best. Apple Podcasts is best. I guess that works. Give us 5 stars and say something nice to massage my delicate ego. Okay. All right.
I didn't think you were going to read that, but there you go.
Tell us your story by logging on. Scroll down, fill out the Your Story form, and you could have your story read on the air.
Now, we have a new review, and we have a new story.
We do. So Shroom.
Oh, I get it.
Ah,
You see
that's
what he did there?
funny. He did a funny.
It's like a phonetic spelling of shroom.
Right. On Saturday, Shroom said that we are great for all stages of recovery. I've been sober for... I've been sleep deprived for about 2 days.
Years.
I've been sober for about 9 years, and I find this podcast very relevant. Thank you, guys. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Shroom, for sharing that positivity with us today.
You know what I say? The relevanter, the better.
Yeah. It's good to be very relevant.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
As middle-aged men, we don't often hear that we're very relevant to anything.
You should. You're my son. How stupid I am. I call streaming. He does a stream for games and streams it, and I call it. I say, "Oh, you're going to do your show today, Dad? It's not a show." I'm like, "Well, what the hell is it?" Like I can't call it a show for some reason. Like,
what is he on? Twitch?
He does Twitch,
and he streams his gaming.
He streams Minecraft, and he has people watching him and sending him money. It's weird.
I try and keep up with what the kids are into these days, but nothing will make my eyes glaze over faster than watching someone else play video games.
And it's a whole industry, a multi-million-dollar industry, not video games, but the watching of others playing video games.
There are now esports competitions where you can sit in a stadium and watch people play video games.
Yeah, well, I mean,
what the fuck is wrong with this country?
When we were kids and video games first came out, people would joke, all of the kids like me that were like video game nerds, they'd say, it's not like there's, a job listed in the paper, needed to save the princess from the Mushroom Kingdom. Apply here. But today,
apparently there
is. You can save the princess from the Mushroom Kingdom and get paid for it.
To show you how
God bless America.
Yeah, seriously. It's great that the kids are finding their own thing. But you know what I did? Just quick diversion into my part of what I did in Seattle. Seattle has a pinball museum.
Interesting.
Which I went to. And it's in this weird little corner of Chinatown. But it's not run by Chinese people. But anyway, that's, weird. I guess, irrelevant.
Yes, it is.
But they have machines from every era, from the 1950s all the way up through the ones that are still being released. Yes, pinball games are still being released in America.
There's a contingent of people who are very, very into it.
Yes.
Like very.
Apparently, some of them make museums in Seattle with pinball machines in them. But I have to say, it was the most enjoyable couple hours that I've spent in a long time. And I typically dislike video games because I'm not good at them.
Yeah.
And I'm all thumbs when it comes to that.
Well,
shit.
You're from the Atari generation, right?
I am from the Atari.
Just like
barely.
my
I'm
brother.
from the Pong generation.
Right.
Not Atari was like really fancy shit when I was a kid.
So your gaming mind is very simple.
I like analog. I like flippers and metal balls.
Metal balls. You're all about the metal balls.
Yeah. Anyway, so
a story
somebody
too.
sent us a story. Brian C. sent us a story. Would you like to read it?
I would. It's short. It's from Brian C. Hey guys, I just started listening recently. I Googled podcast about CBD recovery, and yours came up.
That is a weird niche for us to be in.
Well, we did quite a bit on it. I've been using CBD for a little while now, and I was curious of what other recovery people thought about it. I've been sober for almost 9 years, unless you count the CBD, just kidding. Raising a family, running a small business.
Had to do it.
I was as bad as they get 9 years ago, the suicidal type of drunk. I've been there. It's a whole new life. I'm overwhelmingly grateful for the blessings that have come in my life as a direct result of my recovery. I'm 36 years old. Your podcast is very relevant to me. I will be listening. Yeah, thank you so much. And
Thanks for the insight, he said.
Thanks for the insight. Right, I missed that one. That's the best part. Thank you so much for doing that. If you guys don't know, you can send us your story. Best place to do it is to fill out the form on the website. But, you message us on the Facebook or send an email to Mike. Mike is awaiting your email. So go ahead and do that. The CBD thing, after we got this, now... we decided, because we were unable to do the show in the best way possible. We were considering doing the show last week and having me call in or Mike call in, but, we really just want it to be the way we want it. And so we figured we'd wait. And after reading this review, I thought, hey, let's release like an old episode that maybe some of these new listeners from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United Kingdom haven't heard. And Pakistan. And so I just sort of posted the link to the show where Mike tried a Delta 8 THC CBD gummy.
Well, I didn't know it was Delta 8 when I took it. I knew there was CBD in it.
Yeah, I was taking these Delta 8 gummies, which I have since stopped taking. And listening back to it, I can hear...
Was it funny?
It's funny. It's really funny. And I sound impaired on that.
Well, you were taking Delta 8 CBD.
So it's kind of interesting looking back on that. And I definitely don't sound as sharp as I should be. But it was funny to hear those old shows, and not all of our intro stuff was exactly the way it is, So you can hear we were sort of searching for different things. And
so if you're interested in the historical record and how we came to be the erudite, witty pair that we are today, you can go back and listen to episode 12. I was searching my cabinets for CBD last night, in fact, because I've had terrible insomnia the last 2 days. Getting back from the West Coast, like the 3-hour time change has just totally fucked me. Yeah. Like I can't sleep. And then even like when it's like midnight and it should be time to sleep if I were on the West Coast, because of course I go to bed at 9:00. I couldn't sleep last night. So
Did you take melatonin?
I was looking for melatonin, but the only melatonin I could find was 10 milligrams, which is 10 times the amount of melatonin a human should take.
No, I take like 20 milligrams a night.
That's fucking crazy.
I've been doing it for like 5 years.
Really? And you're okay in the morning?
Yeah. If I sleep. I'm not a good sleeper. I never have been. So I need these kinds of things. Believe me, I've tried nothing. I've tried everything, and my good balance is melatonin. I used to do the CBD, but it got expensive, and I started to think that it was just sort of psychological, so I stopped.
Well, I couldn't find any. I couldn't find a decent...
Next time, call me. I also have Benadryl.
You want me to call you at midnight?
Call me at midnight. We're tandem sponsors. You can call me at any time.
I can't sleep, Mike. Mike, I can't see. Yeah. I can't sleep now. Do you have any drugs I can borrow?
I have plenty. I'm like a pharmacy.
Yeah. Well, I did recall that I had a bottle of NyQuil sitting in the what do you call that room where you piss and shit? The bathroom.
Yes.
And
or the basement, depending on what you were drinking.
But I was like, and then I got into this whole debate with myself. It took about 20 minutes. Like, should I take NyQuil? Should I not take NyQuil? And then I remembered like Dave from Dopey, used to drink NyQuil when he couldn't get to sleep, and then he stopped it because he thought
he was taking shit from his AA group.
And then I'm like, well, why am I thinking about this for 20 fucking minutes? And I did not take
that
NyQuil.
Alone should have put you to sleep.
It should have, yeah.
But it didn't. And so you went to Seattle. I think we could kick off with that. That's sort of the big.
Sure.
That's the elephant in the room.
It is.
We took a dark week without announcing it.
Yeah. That's my fault. I should have given you more of a heads up.
Yeah, it was kind of, and also I'm going away, so we're recording this on an off day. I haven't decided whether we're going to release it today. I'm kind of like jonesing to get a show out there.
I know you are. Don't you think we should wait?
I don't know.
Because we're actually hitting decent downloads, even though we don't have a new episode out. It's kind of weird.
It's cool. More people are finding us. Yeah.
So not only did I go to Seattle, I also went to Portland and Spokane, Washington.
Yeah, and that's sort of the reason we're doing the show today on Ballot Measure 110, because Mike went to Portland and you saw a crack in the streets.
I was fucking horrified when I saw it.
I mean, I've heard people say stuff like that, but I mean, is it as bad as they say? I mean, is it like you're going to get coffee and there's a guy? I mean, because I saw that in New York City.
Yes.
I saw that in the city.
It reminded me of every night we were there reminded me of a Saturday night in the Bronx in the mid '80s.
Wow,
let's say that. I mean, I'm going to hold some of the more salient details until we start talking about the legalization thing. But one thing I noticed about there that's not crack or heroin related is the beer thing.
Yeah,
like people are kind of into beer here also, but I mean, we don't have like a brewery culture here.
Is that like the craft beer?
Yes.
That's a very Brooklyn hipster thing.
Yeah,
right?
but it's on like every block is beer there. Like
big business.
It's a huge business in Seattle and in Portland. And not only that, but they've also integrated the whole marijuana dispensary thing, recreational, like in a way that I wasn't expecting. Because if I went out to California, before I
did you smoke pot while you were there?
No, I did not.
Okay. I have to ask.
You were going to get a scoop.
As your tandem sponsor, I have to know these things.
I would go to California, and you go to Venice or you go to Santa Monica in LA, and there's pot stores, but they're not like central to the culture, right? You walk in, and it's a bunch of tattooed hipsters running the place, and they playing Bob Marley and Jerry Garcia's picture is out. Yeah. It's very stereotypical, right? Stoner culture. But what I noticed out in Washington, and we drove all through the state, and you know how you go through these small towns, like in upstate New York or whatever, and there's a truck stop, maybe there's a couple of antique stores, sort of a nice country vibe. There are also weed stores in all of these towns.
So you can be middle-aged couple antiquing with your child kicking and screaming, not wanting to be there, and you could grab a joint and then do it.
Yeah. But the signs are like the same as the antique stores, like homespun. They've incorporated the pot leaf in some rather folksy ways, into everything. And it was just so normalized, I would have to say in these smaller towns that I saw more weed stores than I saw liquor stores.
And as far as ballot measure 110 goes, that should be a good thing from that perspective, because part of ballot measure 110 is that they take money from the sales of cannabis.
They do.
And that money supposedly goes towards helping these addicts or these drug users who may be, right? I mean, the money's supposed to go back in.
So. It is supposed to. There are some problems with that model.
Yeah.
The main one being that
they're not doing it.
Well,
there is nothing to put money into.
And that's interesting because I had a discussion with, I may have been jumping ahead a little bit, but Portland, the city, is a fucking mess. I was there for work like 6 years ago, and the place was popping. There was youth culture. There was beer culture was a big thing, but there was a lot of art, and there was a lot of activity out on the street. Now you go there, and I guess this is some combination of the pandemic and the riots that have been going on since last summer surrounding Black Lives Matter. Apparently, pitched battles between anarchists and skinheads in the streets,
really, over
the course of the last year, have left the city a bit of a shell of its former self. I did not recognize the place from 5 or 6 years ago. But the thinking is that you're going to take some of this money from these weed taxes and put it towards treatment. Or, the problem with that is because the federal government will not participate in any program using money from marijuana sales.
Right.
That extra stream of income cannot, from the feds, which could be substantial, cannot be integrated with the money that the state is using from the marijuana sales.
Yeah, that's an issue.
That is an issue.
We need the federal government on board.
Anyway, let's hold that for a minute because, we're still kind of getting through our stuff here, our beginning stuff. But
I wanted to. I'm going to go in a completely different direction.
Go.
Pull us out of this before we say too much before the main topic discussion section. So I've been as a stress reliever since I haven't been jogging or running.
Right. Just a lot of jerking off.
A lot of there's always a lot of that, and also Oculus Quest 2, which if you guys don't know that,
off in a different way,
it is, and it's a VR headset. It's the latest one. I got it mostly for my kids, but I secretly wanted it.
Sure.
In any case, it's when that fucking thing works, it is the coolest. I'm a video game nerd from the late 80s, early 90s. And VR was always a big dream for everyone. And they tried and it sucked. And they tried again and it sucked. And there was a cool movie, Lawnmower Man, about it. And then in real life, it sucked. And then everybody gave up on VR. And I just kind of said, it'll never happen. And finally, they have this Oculus Quest, and the fucking thing is awesome, and I love it. And it is, now that I found that I wasn't able to relax and enjoy things like books and video games, not just because I was, an active addict and I had no desire, but even since I got sober, I found like I always had this restlessness inside me, and I think it was tied to the fact that I hadn't graduated college. I know this sounds crazy, but listen to my theory.
Okay.
In the back of my mind, I felt like I couldn't rest until I got that degree.
Right.
I don't know why I was feeling that way, but ever since I graduated and I got that thing off of my chest,
now you can rest. You can relax.
Yeah, it's this feeling that I can sit there, put the machine on my head, and just do something else that has nothing to do with anything else. I can just enjoy myself. And so I feel like, in any case, so I'm doing that, and I got this new game called, it's like The Walking Dead or something. I only get to play for like a half an hour.
Is it like a real Walking Dead? It's not just a zombie thing. It's actually based on The Walking Dead. Because
yes, it's
Ben has been talking up this thing, and he
Saints
wants
and
it.
Sinners.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say was, yes, it's awesome. Yes, it's creepy. Great gameplay, all that stuff. So when it comes time to like save your game and go to sleep for the night,
right,
you have to drink from a flask.
What's in it?
Probably liquor. It's a liquor flask.
Right.
So I'm in this game. I'm playing this game. I'm loving it. And then I'm like, all right, I got to save my game. And it's like, drink from the flask to go to sleep. And I was like, and I actually hesitated. I'm like, does this count? Is this a relapse? Because am I using...
That does not count.
As a sober gamer, should I just try and figure out a way to plow through it without drinking and sleeping?
I mean, you're not really committing murder in these games either, right? So
usually,
it is sort of fantasy.
So I took the drink in the game, and that was that. But it was just a funny aside. I'm like, wow. I mean... So when you're thinking about your kids playing that, I don't know, it sends a horrible message, but so does murdering zombies. I mean, they have families too.
Well, and that was there were a couple of plot points on that in the first few seasons of The Walking Dead. I mean, the whole thing with the governor was predicated on the fact that, he was keeping his people alive, like his daughter alive in a room or something. Yeah. You remember this?
Yes, I watched that season because they wanted to cure her or something.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Zombie apocalypse happens, right? Let's just say it happens. The whole world is gone, right? Half of your family's been turned into zombies. Sure. Maybe all of them.
Right.
Do you drink?
I'll say this. I would drink if it was like out of some kind of necessity, whatever that is. If, like, let's say there's no clean pot.
Like to go to sleep, maybe.
I don't know. Maybe I would.
End of the world.
I'd like to think that I wouldn't, and even after everything, I'd be like, I'm sticking to my guns. I'm not rude. Maybe I would. I don't know.
Do you think it would make the apocalypse easier or harder to deal with?
I don't know. I think it would bring my end quicker. I'm sort of a fatalist. I would want to die at that point.
Really?
So I might go into a death spiral and just fucking kill myself.
It seems like there's two people in this world.
Yeah.
The people who would want to die early at the end of the world, and the people that want to go all fucking road warrior and go through the whole thing.
Yeah,
I am definitely the latter.
You're okay. If you're there, if let's say we're together, then I would stick around. But if it's just me with a bunch of zombies,
right?
I've had it.
I mean, supposedly you can make friends and then you kill zombies together.
Listen, I've seen The Walking Dead. I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah, well, the whole conceit of The Walking Dead is that the zombies are the least of your worries, right?
It's funny you mentioned drinking and all of that with zombies, because when I watch those shows, I'm always rooting for them to find narcotics. I really am.
Right, where are all the drugs?
When they break into, or like in Lost, I don't know if you watch Lost. This is
I never did, yeah.
But there's a heroin addict who, when the plane goes down, he had stashed like a lot of heroin, and he found it after the plane crash. And like he was in the bathroom while it was crashing, trying to do his heroin. And then he saved it. In any case, and it's the guy who played one of the, Frodo Baggins' other guys. He was a hobbit in Lord of the Rings. This
Merry
actor
or Pippin?
It was Merry.
Okay.
No, Pippin. It was Pippin. So that actor. And I just watching him like run around trying to do his heroin while everybody is doing like the Lost thing, trying to figure out where they are. And he's like, I'll be right back. And when they made him detox, one of the leaders found it and they took his heroin away. I was like, no, that's so fucked up, man. He had enough heroin to last like a year or two.
Damn.
And they took it away from him and we had to watch him detox. And that was hard to watch, but...
wow.
I haven't watched that show in a long time.
So I get back from my trip. You're going on one of your own. Where are you going?
I'm going to Mexico.
You don't sound that excited about it.
Listen, I have a major anxiety, and it goes along with, I know I said I graduated from college finally, and now I feel relaxed to do things, but I have so much unfinished business here. My store, I need to make this thing work, like it's teetering. I've took this new job in the medical, like I have so much going on. I'm not ready to like take a vacation. Like I'm not in a place where I feel comfortable. Like, okay, now I'm going to rest and pat myself on the back. Like,
have you always had issues with vacation and downtime? Are you like a workaholic?
No, I'm not. I'm lazy.
Because a lot of like drug addicts, like I think have workaholic tendencies because of the amount of work involved in scoring drugs all the time.
I became a workaholic to get clean, and that's like doing the store. If you guys don't realize it, like I had no experience in retail. I had some experience playing sports, but the act of setting up a sports store pretty much by myself, that took a lot of doing, and it kind of kept me sober for a while. You know what I mean? And so I kept working, and I would always take on marketing jobs just like I do now. I'll do as much as I can. So maybe that's true. Idle hands.
You need some downtime.
Spend time at the genitals or something.
Well, that's not a bad thing. I mean, you need to take some downtime. You need to go to the beach and stuff.
Yeah, I know. I just don't feel settled. I feel like I haven't got myself personally or professionally in a spot where I'm like, I'm doing good. I just want to take a break now. Like, I feel like I'm still trying to make it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but, life is like that. You're always trying to make it, right? It's going to be like that ad infinitum into the future, right?
I don't know what I would have to, like, when am I going to have that feeling where I'm like, okay, I'm settled in my career and I can take a vacation now?
Dude, life is what happens when you're waiting for life to happen.
That's true. It's true.
Anyway, I think you're going to have a great time. Your kids are going to love it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was talking to Sergeant Slaughter. He stopped by. I got to see him. He's doing great. He's got a beautiful girlfriend who
really good.
Yeah,
for him.
Yeah.
Oh, and I don't mean to sound surprised.
No.
Typically, like he will then call you up after listening. Like, why is Mike surprised that I have a beautiful girlfriend?
Well, yeah, you should see her. Sergeant Slaughter always got hot girls. So
it's the uniform.
Yeah, well, even before the uniform, he just had game. Like, we would go out to bars, and he's the one guy that would have no problem just walking up to the hottest girls. And most of the time, one or two of them would, like, humor him, and then by the end of the night, he's leaving with them.
Yeah.
But he was, we were talking, and I was kind of complaining. He's like, man, you have it made. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because I feel like the opposite of having it made. I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel. And then he said, oh, you just did all that construction on your house and you're going to Mexico and, all of this stuff. And all I could think was, wow, you really have it like I don't feel that way at all. Right. And then, maybe from the outside, it might look like, oh, wow, that sounds really great. But the truth is, the only reason that I've accomplished anything in these past, 4 years, like getting in shape is another thing. Like, only once I got sober and I repaired my relationship with my wife so that we can now be a team and plan things financially together. And all of that stuff, that's what makes it possible. I mean, of course, I'm very fortunate here, but it's just, it feels like a lot of work.
Well, it is a lot of work, but it
doesn't feel like I've got it made. You know what I mean? Like I still struggle paycheck to paycheck, maybe not as bad as I used to, but it's still a grind. And I don't know. I feel like having it made is like, you're not worrying where your next paycheck is coming from, that sort of thing. And I'm always worried about that stuff.
I think very few people ever get to the point where they're not worried where their next paycheck is coming from.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting to hear, and maybe I would say, man, Sergeant Slaughter's got it made. He's got a fancy job with the NYPD. He's, living on his own. He kind of does what he wants. He's, he's got the, I don't know. It's just like my father always used to say this poem to me. My parents would always repeat poems by rote to me as a child. It was very creepy sometimes. But one of them was, as a rule, man's a fool. When it's hot, he wants it cool. When it's cool, he wants it hot. Always wanting what is not.
The grass is always greener. In other words,
it is. Indeed.
But I mean, you make a good point that if you're more together, more is expected of you. And my supervisor at work always used to say to me, like when I graduated law school, my first law job, he said, and he was a career attorney for New York City, and so he had a bit of a bureaucratic attitude. And when I said something like, I keep getting these motions, I keep having more court appearance, he goes, in this place, the reward for competency is more work. I was like, well, yeah, I guess so. Which I didn't really see as a bad thing, but you also have to be able to manage the amount of work coming in and not have it overwhelm you.
Right.
And take the occasional vacation, take a step back sometimes.
Look at all the stuff that you say yes to. I mean,
I say yes to way too much.
I mean, I'm the same
first
way.
to admit it.
But when I was actively using, and everybody didn't know per se, but if they didn't know I was using, they knew probably you couldn't count on me. So it's not like, so when I was active, as much of a nightmare as it was, I didn't have a lot of responsibilities.
No.
And when I went to rehab, my only job in life for 3 weeks was just stop drinking and become better.
Sounds very relaxing.
It was. And sometimes I look back and say, man, I wish I could go back to to a rehab just for a month, chill out, refresh.
I mean, there's something to be said for that whole idea of using and drinking and all this stuff is sort of perpetuating your adolescence and sort of perpetuating the time where you were not responsible for anything. You know what I mean? There is a certain immaturity to it, to using.
Yeah, and so when you have when people know they can count on you, they ask more of you. You have more responsibilities.
Yes.
So that's where we're at. Okay. What else did we have to get to before we get to our main topic?
Well, I see you've noted some random thoughts here.
Yes, I did.
On the outline.
Hold on, my boss was trying to call me before my other.
I'll just read the first one for you. Good advice and perspective can come from anywhere and anyone. When it comes to getting advice or perspective from someone else, many people who are not ready for the message look for imperfections in a person's recovery or life to render their message, which could be valuable, null, and void. Very true.
Yeah, I think, I was talking to somebody in recovery about, I forget what we were discussing, but I had mentioned what somebody we both know had said and taking that advice. And they were saying, they did this, and this. I can't listen to them. I can't get anything. But what I found was that I feel like is a big mistake because, when I was in the rooms of recovery, whatever they may be, rehab, AA, NA, sometimes I found that wisdom can come from the strangest and the most unlikely places.
Sure.
Yeah, I've heard things that guys who were detoxing off of heroin, for a day or two, and they'll say something that I can get something out of.
Right.
And I just think it's a mistake to sort of limit where you'll get, inspiration and where you get information based on someone not being perfectly sober. I'll tell you right now, I'm not a perfect recovery guy, not even close. Does that mean that you might be able to take something from what my experiences and apply it to yourself and maybe get something out of it? Of course it does.
People should not be waiting for their own personal recovery Jesus to walk in through the door.
Yeah, because if you're waiting for that perfect person to get the message,
you're going to be waiting a long time. I listened to that Dopey interview this past week with Tom Arnold. Did you listen to that?
Yeah,
it was actually really good. And one thing that he said that I found really interesting was that, he had 19 years and he was coming up on his 20th year, and then he did kind of a sidetrack into pain medication. And, he talked about how difficult it was to go back to the people he was sponsoring after 19 years of sobriety, after going out and then coming back. But, but I guess the thing that occurred to him was like, there is value in that experience and sharing that experience with people who are, just beginning the recovery journey as well. So, definitely a flawed character of sorts, but people who have a lot of time and pick up and then come back, there's a lesson in there, and they're not perfect in their recovery.
Exactly. Like like Tom Arnold, he like you said, he had 19 years,
good
and then
interview,
he relapses. Great interview, and he comes back. And now, should we say, you got to start over on day one, buddy, and nothing you say means anything because you relapse? Obviously not. The guy's got tons of wisdom, tons of experience. And
I think probably more able to look critically at and thoughtfully at his own relapse, and get something out of it than somebody who maybe, has a month or two and then goes out and then pops back in, right? I mean, so there is value in that experience. What happened to your mic?
I don't know. There you go.
Okay.
And there's a lot to be, and we say that all the time, like on our relapse episodes, with the great Aaron Moore. I still value, Erin's opinion and her intelligence and her experience. And, because she, in fact, the fact that she came out with it and is trying to figure out what happened and how to make it better, to me, that's just more experience that we can learn from. And I think, like we said, don't wait for a perfect messenger to get the message.
Plus, some people aren't really exactly sure what the right message is anyway, right? I mean, people have these internalized assumptions about what recovery is,
right?
And the truths underlying the beliefs, but maybe those aren't valid. Maybe if you're looking for advice from 12-step and that's not conducive to your personal recovery, then you should be looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I don't know either. That was a real non sequitur because I wrote this thing down yesterday. People have internalized assumptions about recovery and the truths underlying those beliefs, but they may not be valid. See, for example, the first step. I'm not sure what I meant by that.
The first step
in this context, I know what the first step is. For those that don't, it's admitting that you're powerless over alcohol and your life's become unmanageable.
Right.
Right.
So how does that play in?
I don't know. I don't believe in the concept of powerlessness, maybe.
I'm sort of the same mind, but I understand the function of, saying you're powerless. It's like, when you're in that space, when you're in acute addiction, you have to admit you don't have this. Like, your attempts to control what's going on, to manage your life has become unmanaged. So it's an admission that, it's gotten away from you.
Yeah.
But
it makes you suspend your thinking, though.
But you have to for a little bit. And then I think you got it, because you have to say, I don't have this. I need a different way. So it's a way of saying, like, I need some other help. I need some other approach, because what I'm doing ain't working.
Right.
So we call it powerlessness. But I feel like you shouldn't try and remain powerless forever. I mean, I feel like I have a lot more power than I did, and I was frequently disabused of the idea that I should get my power back. In fact, if I started talking like I felt good about myself and I felt in control,
right,
it would admonish me. It says, "Oh, it sounds like someone's got his will back, like it's a bad thing." And I never thought. I don't know.
I don't think it's a bad thing for you to have your will, as long as you're not relying on willpower, which is a finite resource. And plenty of scientific studies have shown that if you try and will your way to not doing something, it's a recipe for failure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to completely turn your will over to God or a group or something. But anyway, I mean, that's a different discussion.
It is. And before we start our main topic discussion, I was listening to Wasted by Mike Pond, and this is actually apropos, this quote from there. Wasted by Mike Pond, it's actually a really good book. I highly recommend it. It's about a clinician who treats addiction, who then falls into addiction,
right?
Really bad, and goes through the system. And this is his account of it. In any case, the quote is, "If punishment cures addiction, we wouldn't have any addicts." And then I think you wrote, "Conversely, if there's no punishment for the actions of the addicted persons, what is the incentive to get better?"
See, for example, Joseph Naus.
This should lead us into the discussion about Oregon legalizing crack, just like you said. So,
but I will say that my reference to Joseph Naus was, I was thinking about this morning when I was running, because Naus was punished severely. For those of you who are not familiar with him, go back and listen to our 2-part episode on his 2 memoirs of addiction. He was a lawyer who got disbarred and ended up on the sex offender registry for something arguably was inappropriate for him to end up there. And I started thinking, is some punishment appropriate? Maybe. Is the world a better place because Joseph Naus can no longer practice law? Maybe not. So, maybe this whole idea of using criminal law as a punishment is sort of a sledgehammer when what you really need is a scalpel. But anyway, that brings us into the topic that we've picked today, which is decriminalizing of narcotics in the state of Oregon.
Decriminalized narcotics. What the? I wanted to start this. I wanted to start by reading just the AP article. It's very short and it's succinct and it sort of lays it out. Like, I wanted our listeners to
understand what we're talking
just
about.
Just to I want them to, they're about to get the big news. Let's pretend like it just happened. Okay. The news just came out. And Oregon, first state to decriminalize possession of drugs. Salem, Oregon, AP. Police in Oregon can no longer arrest someone for possession of small amounts of heroin, methamphetamine, LSD, oxycodone, and other drugs as a ballot measure that decriminalized them took effect on Monday. Instead, those found in possession would face a $100 fine or a health assessment that could lead to addiction counseling. Backers of the ballot measure, which Oregon voters passed by a wide margin in November, hailed it as a revolutionary move for the United States. Quote, "Today, the first domino of our cruel and inhumane war on drugs has fallen, setting off what we expect to be a cascade of other efforts centering health over criminalization," said Cassandra Frederick, executive director of the Drug Policy Alliance, which spearheaded the ballot initiative. Almost done. Ballot Measure 110's backers said treatment needs to be the priority and that criminalizing drug possession was not working. Besides facing the prospect of being locked up, having a criminal record makes it difficult to find housing and jobs and can haunt a person for a lifetime. 24 district attorneys had opposed the measure, saying it was reckless and would lead to an increase in the acceptability of dangerous drugs. Instead of facing arrest, those found by law enforcement with personal use amounts of drugs would face a civil citation, like a traffic ticket, and not a criminal citation, said Matt Sutton, spokesman for the Drug Policy Alliance. Under the new system, addiction recovery centers will be tasked with triaging the acute needs of people who use drugs and assessing and addressing any ongoing needs throughout intensive case management and linkage to care and services. So that is the AP and go.
So that's okay. So that's the law in a nutshell. Let's pick that apart a little bit. First off, the police in Oregon can no longer arrest someone for possession of small amounts of heroin, meth, LSD, oxycodone, right? It's interesting the amounts that are considered small amounts. Yeah. For LSD, it was 40 hits of LSD. 40. Seems like a lot of LSD.
It's a good time in the parking lot of a dead show.
But only 2 grams of cocaine, which, it would take me, the better part of a month if I was taking acid every day to get through 40 hits of LSD. It would take me about an hour to get through 2 grams of cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of a weird, I'm wondering how they where they drew those lines, or how they actually decided how much drugs. Because what was the heroin amount?
Heroin was up to a gram, which is a
that
bundle.
A lot of heroin?
Well,
that's a bundle.
It's considered a bundle, which is typically divided into 10 packs.
Right.
But I was at a point when I was doing a bundle or two per day.
Okay.
One bundle typically costs, if you're getting it on the wholesale market, $80. I was paying $120.
So what they were saying is they in the law that it was like they didn't want you to have more than like a 10-day supply or something. But I think they really missed the boat on that, because if you're a coke addict, you are typically, and you have a good sense of value and you have a couple of dollars in your pocket, you are not buying this stuff a gram at a time.
Well, I mean, if you get an 8-ball, that's 3.7.
Right, so you're already above
grams.
Yeah, you're already above.
Yeah, a 1 gram bag is between $60 and I think $100, depending on the quality.
All right. So, just a thought on that. So, this whole deal with the $100 fine or a health assessment. So, basically, you can choose when you get the ticket to pay a $100 fine or go for a health assessment, and they give you a number that you can call to set up this health assessment when they give you the ticket. Do you know how many calls they've received since they've set up this system?
Wait, was it like 211 you can call?
No, they actually did not come up with a easy number. It's like a regular phone number.
Oh, okay.
They've received 26.
26. And I think this came down, was it June 2020?
Yeah, fall of 2020.
Fall of 2020. Yeah. And 20 calls.
Now, there's a reason for that, because the $100 fine that they're issuing, there is no criminal penalty for not paying it. So unlike a traffic ticket where, if you don't pay it, they can issue a warrant, or if it's a parking ticket, they can come and tow your car. Here, if you don't pay it, nothing will happen to you. Plus, the statute was written that it gives the judge the ability, if you have to show up to court for this thing, to bust the fine down to $45 as well. So this $100 fine or an assessment, if the goal is to get people to go into treatment, or to have the assessment, and there's no requirement once you have the assessment to actually go into treatment, then this incentive does not appear to be enough to get people into treatment. Plus, I might add, what I found out when I was in Portland, watching The Walking Dead roam around the streets in Portland, was that the police in Portland itself, I can't speak to the rest of Oregon, have been given the mandate that unless they see an imminent danger to life, they are not to intervene in anything going on in the street. So you have really no way to get people into treatment based on this scenario.
That's the problem that I'm starting to see with this. I mean, I didn't go there and see it myself, but from what I understand, this system only works if people who are using the small amount are being contacted by police. And it sounds, because the only way this works is when a guy is smoking crack outside of Starbucks, he, if nobody comes up to him and says, here's your ticket, you're not, then he'll never get the opportunity to, access these programs or, be called into question for it. And none of that happens. So instead of that, what you're having is, on the one hand, they're saying, oh, we're going to help you, and if you have this much, you're going to get this and that. But it's not happening because they're not being stopped from what you could see.
I will tell you what I saw in Portland. So my older son and I have different views on politics, and we've been talking about the situation in Portland for the better part of a year in terms of the what started as the Black Lives Matter marches that ended up as pitched battles in the street between anarchists and skinheads and so on. And the person at the hotel we were staying at, which was a little bit outside of town, said, there's some areas that you probably don't want to go into after dark because there's still activity down there, like people are breaking windows and stuff. And in fact, we talked to somebody that we met on a tour who said, yeah, they broke the window of front of our hotel last night. So we went out, we had dinner, and my son's like, I want to go see that. I want to go see if there's fighting in the streets of Portland. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. It's early. Let's go drive downtown.
Right along.
Because again, the last time I was in Portland Portland was like a normal place, like a normal city.
Right.
So I drive downtown, and I drive near this famous place called Powell's Books. It's like the biggest. It's like the Strand in New York City, but it's like occupies a city block, and it's so much better.
Oh, wow, better than the Strand.
Yeah, it's really an incredible bookstore, and it's like a beacon of light in the middle of this blighted part of downtown Portland. So I'm sitting there in the minivan with my kids. I'm wearing like a polo shirt. I look like the biggest white cracker guy, around. And so we're driving around a little bit, and we make a turn, and there's this area in Portland called the Pearl District, and that's where like everything has been going down. But I drive down this block, and I'm looking at people to the left, to the right, smoking, like openly smoking crack, like just standing there in the middle of the street. And then you turn the other block, and that must be the heroin block, because there's like 7-8 people just nodding out in the middle of the street, and homeless encampments everywhere. And I didn't see a cop, or never mind a cop, like any kind of social service, anything, anywhere. So it was just an open air drug market, open air drug use. And I'm like, what is going on here?
And this was definitely not the idea. For what they wanted. What I discovered just by researching this a little bit is even the people who promoted this and are behind it and are happy about it, they're saying like, listen, this is not ideal. This is a first step. This sets a precedent that will get us to where we are, because the common in the industry there, recovery, the common sentiment is that okay, this is great. Now we're, really reaching out. This is all about harm reduction, safe injection sites. But what we don't have is a safe drug supply. That doesn't happen. So people are still dying.
Right. So because legalization did not address the issue of drug safety. Because there was no, the drugs are not being provided by the government or.
Right. Which is a step in the crazy direction, but it would make things safer. And on top of that, if they're setting up, they don't have the personnel or the facilities to do what they're proposing to do. So they've, like some in law enforcement and some in recovery who are not for this, say it's putting the cart before the horse. In other words, there should have been measures to fund more research, to fund more safe injection sites, more rehabs that were accessible and affordable, and then open the floodgates and say, okay, now you don't get arrested, but if you are come in contact with a police officer, you will have to go get an assessment. You will not be put in jail, and then from there we have infrastructure to take care of you and do the right thing and give you an opportunity to finally get recovery. And so because that stuff is not in place and it's just bedlam, it's just bananas.
Well, a lot of advocates of decriminalization and legalization like to point to Portugal as the model, right? Because Portugal effectively decriminalized all narcotics several years ago. But what they fail to point out is that Portugal took years before they decriminalized to set up the healthcare system, the mental health system, the rehab system, all this stuff. They put all these structures in place before they pulled the trigger on legalization so that the system was ready.
Right.
In Oregon, they just pulled the trigger on legalization without doing anything to prime the healthcare system for an influx, what's going to be an influx of thousands and thousands of people who are needing treatment. Now, never mind the fact that those people are not actually getting to treatment yet because of some of the other problems with the system. But it seems like if you were going to, you said this to me yesterday, you said it almost seems as though they did it this way on purpose to portray decriminalization as a failure before it even gets off the ground.
Yeah, that's sort of a conspiracy theory, and I realize it's kind of crazy.
From you?
But, that was one of the first things. That was one of my instincts was, what? They did this on purpose because, I feel like some of these guys are patting themselves on the back saying, see, we told you these people are animals. We told you this was going to happen, and now they're going to, take it away, and they're going to make things so bad that it'll get shut down when they try and do an actual law. And, because everyone's going to say, see, these animals couldn't control themselves. See, things got horrible. And I feel like it almost be like it's built to spill. in that sense.
I mean,
it seems that way.
I think moving to drug use as a healthcare issue rather than a criminal justice issue overall is probably a good thing.
Yeah, and
the way it's set up right now, though, in Oregon and everywhere else in the country, the only way that you get someone who is resistant to treatment to at least be forced to engage with the concept of treatment is with the intervention of the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and that really stuck out to me too, because this ballot measure 110 and the issues going along with Portland it's so complicated, and there's so many different angles. And one of the things I really related to was the criminal justice aspect of it. Like, yes, it's really bad that people are using crack and heroin in the streets. Okay, but there's something good about this, and that's what they're saying. Like, parts of it, it's progress, not perfection, type of thing.
Right, exactly.
Now, the way the criminal justice system is set up when it comes to drugs right now and alcohol, like DUIs, is like a nightmare. And it paralleled some of my story, what I had to go through. Like, I got arrested for a DWI, and then I was punished for being a drug addict because the terms of my probation, were impossible to meet, and the support I was getting it didn't match up, and there was in one of these articles that we were discussing, I think it was the second one, decriminalization in Oregon, how's it going so far? Mm-hmm. It highlights someone who was caught in it. In the cycle of the criminal justice and using. It says Tanisha de Mason is no stranger to jail. She estimates she was arrested no fewer than 15 times, starting at the age of 18 and continuing through her 20s. Quote, I used to joke that county jail was just school for the hood, says de Mason, an African-American woman from East Portland. I just started meeting more and more people who are into more and more things. Honestly, it taught me how to do more criminal activity. And she says, I was on probation, just like me. I could never pass a drug test. Mm-hmm. It's stressful being in that situation because you're always possibly going to jail. In jail, they don't care about you, she says, her voice tinged with cynicism and sadness. You're just another number. They don't even treat us like humans. I've literally been called animal by a CO, corrections officer. She sought substance use disorder treatment many times, only managing to graduate, quote unquote, once. I sent her that emphasized healing from past traumas. She used heroin again an hour later. On her other 8 attempts, she didn't last more than 4 days before leaving. Now she says she fell in love with life. She left her addiction behind and is starting school in the fall, though she worries that her criminal record could limit her options. I really related to that because I was going through the same thing. I couldn't get off of probation because my substance use disorder was not being treated properly. I was not succeeding, and therefore, I kept, using up the local resources at the probation department, going back to outpatients because I was court mandated, and it's just like it puts such a strain on the person suffering from addiction, and on top of it, you've got a criminal record.
Well, and that's a good point because ballot measure 110, which is now the law, did not provide for expungement of prior criminal convictions for things that are now not illegal. So if you caught a felony for using drugs last year before this passed, even though this year it would be the equivalent to a traffic violation, your felony is not expunged.
Right.
You still have that. And that seems to me like a huge flaw. But it also seems like there's a big opportunity here because one nice carrot that you could use to get people into treatment would say, if you do successfully complete treatment, we will expunge and seal your prior criminal record. Now that I think would be a big incentive to get people into treatment. I
think so. I mean, and that is a huge problem. I mean, I worry about having, even though I don't have a felony,
right?
Still, there's it's on my record. There's a misdemeanor. I had a DWI. I mean, it was 6 years ago now, but I worry about that. I want to maybe go into teaching. Do I have to worry about that? I don't know.
I mean, to me, that's true decriminalization. Is if you remove the criminal consequence from the addictive behavior. I mean, you can say, listen, if you don't go to treatment, fine. You'll keep your DWI. It'll be on your record. It'll follow you for the rest of your life. But if you do get yourself clean, we'll get rid of that. We'll give you a fresh start. But I mean, this country, the fresh starts are not like. Anyway, the interesting thing though is that there's a lot of recovery leaders in Oregon who have sort of come out against the way this has been implemented.
Right.
This guy, Mike Marshall, who was the co-founder and director of the group Oregon Recovers, says that he's worried that the state basically jumped off the decriminalization cliff towards a fractured, dysfunctional, and underfunded treatment system that's not ready to handle an influx of more people seeking treatment. Our big problem, he says, is our healthcare system doesn't want it, is not prepared for it, doesn't have the resources for it, and honestly doesn't have the leadership to begin to incorporate that expanded treatment. And you're going to take the decriminalization of marijuana, you're going to take that money and you're going to apply it here, but it seems as though there's not enough money for what is required here. Because when you have a for-profit healthcare system, and this is an even bigger macro issue, you need an enormous, if you're going to take a population of people, thousands and thousands of people, and all of a sudden dump them at the feet of a recovery and healthcare system that is unprepared to accept them, what's going to happen?
Yeah, the cart has gone before the horse, apparently.
Right.
But all of these problems with, because it does address a lot of, terrible things that were going on that now aren't going on. But, it's cause and effect. You do one thing and this other stuff happens. You have to be able to handle people, but...
Never mind what kind of treatment we're talking about here. I mean, what are we going to do? Are we talking about medically assisted treatment? Are we talking about access to 12-step groups? Are we talking about psychotherapy? Are we talking about rehabs? I mean, none of this has been fully considered, as far as I can tell from the stuff that I've been reading about this.
Now, when they do stop and arrest you, which it doesn't sound like they really do, they came up with something where they call it a Class E felony. When a law enforcement officer finds someone in possession of the drugs, they are now written a Class E violation. They will either face
not a felony,
a $100 fine or undergo an assessment within 45 days. If the assessment is not completed, the fine will be imposed. People with drugs who do not have SUD, substance use disorder, must complete the assessment. But if the assessment tools work as intended, they won't be recommended to treatment. So now they'll in the unlikely case that a police officer stops you, and I think that's the problem, is people are not being contacted. They're just out there doing it and they're being left. But if they do, you get this $100 ticket, and then your incentive is you go get assessed, and I guess they diagnose you with SUD or they don't, and then give you services. But I think the real problem here is they're not contacting the people who are just using freely in the street. They're just saying, it's a free-for-all.
Right.
But it's not supposed to be. Problem also being that when they do stop people and send them to these assessments, they don't have the infrastructure and funding in place to do what they should be doing to make this work.
And that's partially because, as we alluded to before, Oregon cannot take matching federal Medicaid money, which is key funding for state programs for substance abuse, because it's using tax revenue from the legal sale of marijuana, which the feds still classify as a Schedule I drug. So, what you have is some district attorneys who are greatly in favor of this, but you have law enforcement, which is not. But I sort of dismiss law enforcement's protestations, because they've never found a problem they don't think that could benefit from arresting more people and putting them in jail. But
I just need to make a phone call for work, and we're going to take a break.
We'll be right back after these words. Did you take care of that thing? All right. So the cops have been saying, I told you so. Meanwhile, they've been choosing to not really arrest or enforce this or engage with people. But I mean, so the cops say we're going to see more and more people needing help because drugs are going to be more readily available and there's no one keeping it in check. Overdoses will go up, crime will go up.
They're supposed to keep it in check.
Right. Supporters of decriminalization say that's largely last gasp fear-mongering by unreconstructed drug warriors who won't accept that the interdict, arrest, and jail model has failed. So I think the important takeaway here is that they're trying something, and there's growing pains, and maybe they stepped into it too hastily. But criminalization of addiction seems it hasn't worked.
No, but they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
Oh, the cops?
Anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, great, we've set this up, but if you're not contacting these people, I mean, and if it's not the cops' job, then there should be a service. There should be, like addiction contact people who work with the local police or whoever the new system that they have funded from, cannabis related sales that should be going out that can give maybe a meter maid who goes around and they'll see somebody smoke okay, fine, you're smoking crack and you're not going to jail, but guess what? Here's your citation because the
right.
rule says
call this number.
You want to do this? Fine, but you have got to contact our people. You need to be assessed. You're not going to jail. You're not going to get a record, but you're not going to use with impunity. We're not going to, because we're trying to help. And so until that piece, falls into place, they're going to continue to have this issue. And I don't know how much of this is just people running crazy once they've been set free type of thing.
I don't know.
How long can it go on like this before these people either die or people get sick of it?
Well, I think people are already sick of it, at least in Portland. I can't really say how it's playing out in other cities. I mean, that was the only city in Portland, in Oregon that I was in. I will say it's only been, 6 months? So, there's bound to be some growing pains. If you go back again to the prosecutor from Multnomah County, which includes Portland, he says maybe, his quote is, maybe there would have been a better way to glide path this, but a jolt was needed. Merely tinkering with drug and addiction policy wasn't working. Sometimes you just need to stop the way you're doing it, Schmidt says, to put some urgency behind fixing systems that need to come into place. So hopefully they get it together because I think it's a bold experiment. I just think the execution was the rollout was pretty flawed.
I completely agree. And this is such a pressing topic. It's so interesting because this is sort of like looking into the future. I mean, a lot of us have said, we should, legalize everything. Lots of people have said that, thinking that was the answer. They're trying something like that. It's very interesting. So I feel like a lot of us have been saying, oh, in Sweden, they've done this and everything is great. What is the country that everybody points to and says, what is it, like Amsterdam, Holland, Portugal?
Yeah.
And I haven't heard, I've only heard good things about those experiences. That's a lot of people who are advocating for this kind of decriminalization point to these European countries. Now, are they not having these same issues? And if so, what are they doing to?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned with Portugal, it seems like they took some time to put the systems for treatment and care in place before they, went out and legalized everything.
Yeah, and I understand that they have a far smaller population and better universal health care, which is another aspect of this. Who's paying for this health care?
Right.
Can it all be funded by cannabis-related sales?
Well, not without the Medicaid piece.
Right. And so there's so many pieces to this that don't seem to be fitting into place. But it's one thing at a time. Like you said, it's growing pains. This is a step in the right direction. So the question is, will anybody can do this in another state?
No, well, not if what happened in Portland receives the media attention that it apparently, is flying under the radar right now. I mean, right now, Portland is seen as sort of a battleground between left and right because of, I think there's more focus on the BLM protests and the anarchist stuff going on there. But, if anybody really starts to take a hard look at this, I think there's going to be some questions. So, I hope things work themselves out.
We can't have anarchy. And look, you can't have your cake and eat it too, but we can treat addicts and addiction with more compassion and intelligence than we are currently.
Right.
I knew guys when I was in my court-mandated rehabs. There was one gentleman who was arrested with, I don't know, like an ounce or two of marijuana. And he was basically serving, he served 6 months, I think, to a year in jail. And he was on some kind of crazy probation, 10 years or something like that. And of course, he was African American.
Right.
And I found that the African American guys and women that I met always seemed to have more consequences.
Yeah.
Really, though.
No kidding.
I mean, it's anecdotal and, it's not from a study, but it's what I noticed. And it wasn't necessarily worse crimes than some of my, white, people that I met who were also suffering. So,
we could do a whole episode on that. There's a great book by a sociologist named Jeffrey Ryman called The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. And since more poverty tends to exist in African American communities, what Ryman did is he went back and he took a look and he analyzed it at every single step of interaction with the criminal justice system, from arrest to prosecution to deals being offered to sentences being imposed. African Americans are much more likely to receive stronger consequences for white people who commit the same crime. So, in my mind, there's no doubt that there's racism baked into the criminal justice system.
There certainly is, because any kind of studies also suggest that the same percentage of black people compared to white people admit to using drugs.
Right.
So if that's the case, why is the criminal convictions side of it so disproportionately for African Americans and people of color? And that definitely points to a definite inequity in the way that justice is being meted out, and I use justice lightly.
My personal experience in the 80s in the Bronx, I used to get stopped by the cops all the time. And if I was ever stopped by the cops with a street dealer or whatever, I would always be told to go back to my campus and they would arrest the guy who I was with. There was it's just the way it happened, and everybody knew that that's the way it happened. The white kids get to go home, and the black kids get to go to jail.
Yeah, and I guess finally, this makes me think of a quote I heard from somewhere at some time. It was that white people go to rehab and black people go to jail, and that is the sad truth of it. This ballot measure 110. Maybe this is a step in the right direction, but maybe if we take too many steps in this direction, we're going to fall off a cliff.
I don't know. We'll see.
We shall
Time
see.
will tell.
All right. That was interesting.
Thank you.
And
it was interesting.
if you have comments, I want to hear from you, Monksters. Go on to our private Facebook group, Recovery in the Middle Ages on Facebook. And let's talk about it. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. Send an email to Mike R. or NatX
at middleagesrecovery.com. To find the private Facebook group, go to the main Facebook group, and you can request to join the private group from there.
Yeah, and we're having a lot of fun on there. Yeah. People are starting to talk. People are starting to get to know one another and looking to do maybe some meetups in the near future. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe even a retreat, an RMA retreat, where we can all get away, hang out, and talk recovery or not talk recovery, just kind of get away from it all when things cool down with this. So a lot of fun stuff planned. And
this is the Delta 8 variant?
Delta Plus.
What is it called?
There's a Delta Plus now.
Oh, is there?
There's Delta 8. Now there's Delta Plus.
Delta 8.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's not Delta 8.
Delta 8.
What is it?
It's the Delta variant.
They should call it the Delta 8 variant.
The Delta 8 variant.
That'd be good brand.
Can I talk? Okay.
You can talk. Yes.
Can we do recovery in the news? You didn't think I was going to let us get away with not doing that, did you?
Recovery in the news, motherfucker.
So as long as we're discussing the legalization of drugs, I figured this article I found from the website projectcbd.org might be in order. The article is titled LSD Therapy for Alcoholism, Treating a Spiritual Disease. The following article was adapted from LSD, the Wonder Child, the Golden Age of Psychedelic Research in the 1950s. Beginning in the late 1950s, the article starts, 5 hospitals in the Saskatchewan district of Alberta, Canada, offered a new kind of psychedelic therapy, treating alcoholism with LSD. Wow. Duncan Blewett, an Irish psychologist, played an active role as an LSD facilitator at Saskatchewan, administering LSD to numerous alcoholics who couldn't tread the 12 steps. While there in 1959, he wrote perhaps the world's first medical manual for using LSD to treat alcoholism, the Handbook for the Therapeutic Use of Lysergic Acid Diethylmalide 25, Individual and Group Procedures. The use of psychedelics to treat alcoholism actually had its origins in the early 1900s. Anthropologists working in 1907 reported on alcoholics among Native Americans who had successfully given up the bottle in favor of peyote, the hallucinogenic cactus. Those who made the transition from whiskey to dry whiskey became successful, healthy, and outstanding members of their society. Consider the following testimonial. Peyote cures us of our temporal ills as well as those of a spiritual nature. It takes away the desire for strong drink. I myself have been cured of a loathsome disease too horrible to mention. So have hundreds of others. And then they go on to talk about, more modern treatment of LSD, with LSD to cure alcoholism. Interesting article, and interesting to note that Bill W. himself, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, also experimented with LSD as a method to cure alcoholism.
Is that true? I've heard that several times from you and others, and
yeah, it's true.
Where is that documented? Why do we know that?
It's all over the place.
Yeah, but who did he admit to that?
I think he admitted to it himself.
He said that he did it?
Yeah.
Because it sounds blasphemous to speak that way about the great Bill W. But
the great Bill W. who was begging for drinks on his deathbed.
Oh, come
Bill
on!
W.
Who wouldn't be begging for drinks? I mean, probably me. But see, that's another thing. Don't wait for the perfect messenger. Like
no.
Bill W. had a great message. Yes,
he was a womanizer. He did have
like Cuomo.
He had anger management issues. He abused his wife and so forth. But whatever. It's fine. You're right. None of us are perfect.
It doesn't
understood.
diminish the message. I like the idea of all of this. LSD therapy and ketamine therapy, and there's a lot of. I think that this is an untapped, region of scientific research that there could be great benefits to this, and I think part of the upside to decriminalizing some of these compounds and these substances is that scientists will now have more access to do these kinds of research. Now, I don't want to be the guinea pig for these things. I did plenty of acid in high school, but probably I wasn't dosing properly, and
you weren't taking it in a controlled environment.
Yeah, I'm very open.
The Grateful Dead show is not a controlled environment, from my own experience.
I'm very open-minded about this stuff. I say leave it to the scientists and let them do all these experiments. Don't hamper them. I mean, within reason. You don't want them like doing horrible, immoral things, but study this stuff and then come back to us with the data, and then we can make a decision. Then I can say, hey, I've got PTSD. It looks like there's a treatment that uses, LSD. Maybe that would work for me. I don't know.
Well, they did do a study in the golden age of LSD research in 1959. So this was a few years ago, so take it with a grain of salt. But follow-up surveys conducted after the LSD treatment revealed surprising results. Roughly half the patients either improved or stopped drinking altogether. So promising was the success rate of recovering alcoholics with LSD therapy that the Saskatchewan Bureau of Alcoholism called LSD the most helpful remedy we've known. I might note that a 50% success rate is much higher than the success rate of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, but if you ask certain people in AA, they'll tell you it's more like 80% of the people who follow the program to a T.
Right.
Problem with that
Perfect.
is
Self-selecting statistics. You got to love it.
The problem that I've always seen with people who say that, you're just not working the program, is that when the first thing you have to do in a program is the one thing you don't know how to do, stop drinking and using. How can you, it's like you can't engage the program until you do the one thing is impossible for you to do. So what kind of program is that? I mean, it should be in reverse. There should be 11 steps showing you how to stop doing the drinking.
Right.
And then that should be the final piece. And I think maybe that's where we're headed, is maybe reversing this.
Listen, many people have success in AA, at least 5 out of 100.
5 out of 100 is great.
So if that works for you, then great.
Yeah, so very
I
interesting.
support your recovery in any way that you choose to engage it.
I'll quote Dopey Dave. He said, I think it was Bridget Fetisi, who is an addiction guru with many followers, and she had admitted on his show that she now smokes a joint before bed every night.
Right.
And what Dave said, and he's an AA guy, he's an abstinence guy, and he said, I'm comfortable with your happiness.
Right.
And I love that.
That's exactly right.
That's how I feel.
I'm also an abstinent guy.
Yes.
As are you.
That's right.
Right?
I'm abstinent.
It's all good.
Unless you count all of the shit that I do, like CBD, and which a lot of people...
I don't count that stuff.
Yeah, so... That's loud. All right. The news.
I don't know why it's so loud.
Is it going to peak? I don't want it to peak.
I'm peaking, man. I'm peaking.
And that brings us to...
What does it bring us to?
Week in Weird.
Oh, yeah. Is this Bigfoot?
No. Ghost hunt. This is actually... Okay. Ghost hunter injured in fall through roof of Buffalo train station. I laughed so hard after I just read that headline that I had to do it. A ghost hunt in Buffalo took a terrifying turn this past weekend when a woman was badly injured after falling through the roof of a train station and plummeting to the ground.
Oh, dear.
This scary incident reportedly occurred on Saturday evening as a woman and a man were searching for spirits at the historic Buffalo Central Terminal.
Is it supposedly haunted, I guess?
Yeah, you've seen these shows. They walk around and they've got the night. Like, so it's like picturing these people and then boom. At some point during their investigation, authorities say they ventured atop a substation roof at the site and disaster struck because it evidently could not support their weight. According to police, the unfortunate woman, which she shall forever be known as...
They didn't name her, huh?
The unfortunate woman fell approximately 20 feet through the roof to the ground below and sustained multiple injuries. Her ghost hunting companion managed to avoid falling.
Thank goodness.
He just pointed and laughed, which likely averted an even greater tragedy as he was able to call for help. A railway hub for the city from 1929 to 1979, when operation of the location ceased, Buffalo Central Terminal fell into disrepair over the subsequent decades until recent years when the work began to revitalize the site as a historic landmark.
Said it was haunted, I guess is the PS, right? The caretakers of the station smartly embraced the spooky stories and have hosted ghost tours at the location.
Yeah, I feel like I've always wanted to see that happen watching one of these ghost shows. They're in these abandoned buildings. Be like, you know what would be hilarious? He just fell through the roof. Right. So,
one thing I forgot to mention, just because I was expecting a Bigfoot story this week.
I'm sorry. Next time.
Oregon is like Bigfoot Central, you know.
That's true.
Really trade on there.
That's true.
So we went to visit.
You see Bigfoot smoking crack.
Some guys could have passed that test. We went to visit Multnomah Falls, which is right outside the city, but the shuttle that we used was Sasquatch shuttle, and it had pictures of the silhouette of Bigfoot on it. And I was thinking about you the whole time. You would have really enjoyed the Bigfoot iconography all throughout the Columbia River Valley.
Did you know you can go squatching, and it's actually a verb to go squatching?
I know some people that do it in upstate New York.
Why don't we go squatching? That could be our RMA
Bigfoot
retreat.
Does not exist.
Let it be. It's the journey, not the destination, Mike.
That's true. We could think of it as an allegory for something, perhaps. Well,
anyway, that about does it.
You've wasted another good hour with.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
That about does it for today. We had a great time as always. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So tweet us at twat. You twit.
You twit.
Support your favorite show. Drop a 5-star review and send us your recovery story. Join our private Facebook group. Buy a T-shirt. Look out for the new ones. Or simply write and say hello. At NatX or Mike R at middleagesrecovery.com. We love meeting new monksters and chopping it up on the Facebook group. And
chopping it up.
And finally,
is that a new?
That's a new one I'm using. And finally, the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend.
Yes.
If you get something out of our little show, please share the love and help grow the RMA movement. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
Progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Be good.